Welcome to another episode of Chax Chat. Join Chad Chilius and me, Dax Castro, where each week we wax poetic about document accessibility topics, tips, and the struggle of remediation and compliance. So sit back, grab your favorite mug of whatever, and let's get started.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Chax Chat podcast. We're so glad you decided to join us today. And as a reminder, if you haven't done so already, I encourage you to check out our newly redesigned website at chaxtc.com, as well as our booming YouTube channel by simply searching for Chax Chat on YouTube. My name is Chad Chilius. I'm an Adobe certified instructor and one of the accessibility wizards here at Chax Training and Consulting.
And my name is Dax Castro. I'm also an accessibility wizard here at the wonderful world of Chax Training and Consulting. And Chad and I are both certified as accessible document specialists. And if you'd like your certification too, head on over to accessibilityassociation.org and click on certifications and get more information about that. Chad, you mentioned the website and the YouTube channel. We just passed 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So we've been doing the podcast for a while now as a video format rather than just the podcast alone format. And traction's been slow, but persistence pays off. We also post a bunch of little shorts. So we take some of the little snippets off of our podcast and we post them as YouTube shorts on there. So if you're looking for a little bite-sized piece of accessibility wisdom from the wizards at Chax Training and Consulting, you can share those shorts with whoever you want, whether that's internal or external. We'd love to get your feedback on you if you think those are valuable or not.
Absolutely. I will tell you, it's been exciting to watch it grow. I mean, kind of just like our Facebook group, the YouTube channel. I remember, Dax, at one point we had 15 subscribers to our YouTube channel, and we're like, oh man, but it's really good to see the word getting out and to see that audience grow.
In fact, you mentioned the PDF Accessibility Facebook group. We have 5,794 members in that group. It is literally the largest conglomeration of accessibility professionals as an organization anywhere in the world. So it's really, really glad. So if you're not part of that group and maybe you don't like Facebook or, that type of thing, you can create a ghost account and just come in with a dummy account that gets you in. We've tried Slack and Discord and other things, and it's not as familiar as Facebook. And it just as much as I agree with, your people's decisions to maybe not use Facebook under principle, it's just where people are. And unfortunately it is where the PDF accessibility group lives. So
it obviously is, right? I mean, the numbers don't lie. And, as you pointed out, we tried a couple of other platforms to try to move people away, but it works. It works and people are going there. And I mean, it's very active. I mean, what's really cool is, you go on there and people are constantly asking questions and having those questions answered, which is really neat. Yeah.
In fact, if I look on the group right now, let's take a look real quick. We see someone says, I have a 127 page table generated from Excel file. The table comes out with about 10,000 rows in a well-generated form, except that the rows contain div tags, which are about 10. Every 17 pages, there's a new div tag containing 17 pages of a table row. And they start talking about how do I effectively get rid of all these divs? Well, if you were using Common Look, you can
I was just going to say that.
easily go in and say, look for a TR that has a div and level up the children of the content. It's so convenient.
And Dax, I think that's a classic example, right? Because we get this question a lot, right? Where people are like, well, what tools do you use?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this is my list, right? This is my list of tools that I use, right? And it really comes down to what problem I'm trying to solve. But the minute you mentioned that, the minute you said, I've got a div every 17 pages or, whatever it was, I immediately was like, well, that's a job for Common Look, right? There's no other product that I know of that can accomplish that efficiently. But with Common Look, I can literally say, find any div tag. And when you do, level it up, right? And we're done. Right.
Literally, I just wrote that as a reply back to this person. So,
did you tell him we're currently recording a podcast?
No, actually, I should. Yeah, that'd be funny. So all that to say, the PDF accessibility Facebook group is a great place to go. Lots of really great resources. But also this podcast. We are on season 6. We have literally 6 years, 5 and 3, 5 years and 3 episodes worth of 45-minute snippets of content. It is almost 80. It's almost 100 hours of content.
Is that true?
Yeah.
We've been doing this for almost 6 years.
Yes.
So that means I met you like 8 years ago?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, you're one of the longest. I would say you're my longest known friend, Chad. But I would say you're the person that's put up with me the longest in recent history. How's that? So, as a person with ADHD, we don't always get friends. We get people who put up with us for a length of time, and that is how that goes.
I really believe, Dax. I mean, listen. When you and I started this business, one of the things we really agreed on was that fundamentally we wanted to do this to help people. Right. Yep. And I think you and I have done a really good job of that. Right. I think you and I don't always agree on everything.
Sure.
But I feel like when it comes to accessibility, we're pretty much on the same track usually.
What's really great about it is that we both come from a level of knowledge. And so when we have a conversation and we're like, no, I don't think I agree with that. Mm-hmm. We have a really good discourse about why and what the nuances are. And sometimes I won't say I win, but sometimes my point of view is the one we agree on at the end. And sometimes it's you where we're like, oh, I really didn't consider this, and this, or the level of effort to get from A to Z. And so I think it's really great rather than just being kind of well, that person knows more than me, so their answer's got to be right. It's really a good mix,
good balance.
Of knowledge.
I think it's a really good balance, and you and I had a meeting the other day and you were bringing up some topics and I'm like, you know what, Dax, that makes a lot of sense, and I agree, so I think it's a friendly Discord, a friendly, knowledge areas going back and forth. And you're right. sometimes we agree with you, sometimes agree with me, but and a lot of it we agree on together.
Well, I think the most important thing is you have in the world of accessibility, everybody who's listening, just take a moment, take a breath and take this in. You have to be willing to concede that you will never know all there is to know about accessibility. You will always be learning. It is a continual journey, and what you knew this year is more than you knew last year, and is not as much as you're going to know next year. It is just part of the journey. So,
as a matter of fact, we're working on a future podcast where you and I are basically going to kind of concede that we were somewhat wrong, right?
Okay, yeah.
No, I don't want to say wrong, but
no, I'm with you.
I feel like we were
change, points of view change.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think like sometimes the more you read the WCAG success criteria, the more your mind changes, Well,
the hard part about it is that the WCAG success criteria was made by a group of people. And just like everything that's made by people, it's fallible. And when you start looking at all the nuances as technology changes, as implementation changes, as the purpose of a PDF changes from what is normally supposed to be just a an online version of a print document into these digital web pages with video embedded and QR codes and all this stuff, right? The use cases change. And so therefore technology has to change along with it. And speaking of technology has to change, today I'm excited about a topic. So we recently just got hit with a new update from Microsoft. Microsoft just announced that they have worked really hard to make math inclusive for everyone in both Word and PowerPoint, which is outstanding. And for those of you in the accessibility world, there's an underlying code called MathML. It's a math markup language. And this markup language looks a lot like HTML code. It's got a bunch of opening and closing tags and content sits inside it. That code can be read by assistive technology relatively easily. So things that we struggle with as remediators, like superscript or subscript or complex math symbology, there's code for that. And if that code is displayed for the screen reader user, then JAWS or NVDA can absolutely voice that correctly. But we know currently, if you had 12 sub A left paren X right paren, right? We've got a number 12, and then you've got a subscript exponent variable, and then you've got a set of parentheses. The screen reader will not identify that subscript or superscript, for that matter, as something different naturally, natively. But with MathML, you get all of the complex nuances of what's a numerator, what's a denominator, what's an exponent, what's a sub or a sup. And what's been great is that Microsoft has really implemented what we were hoping InDesign would implement when they just last year announced that you have the ability now to paste MathML into InDesign and get the perfect, looking equation. And we were like, great, you're going to take that MathML and export it over to the PDF, right?
Yep.
And they went, no.
Like, oh, wait, what do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Microsoft has done it.
Yeah.
They literally have done what we had hoped that Adobe would do. And so Adobe, if you're listening, the gauntlet has been thrown down. Get your crap together, because obviously it's possible.
Yep. Yeah, because the process in both applications is exactly the same up to a certain point, right? I know in InDesign, you open a dialog, paste the MathML, place it. In Word, you could pretty much just paste the MathML and it'll convert it to the equation for you.
Yes.
The process in both apps up to that point is exactly the same. But Microsoft took it to a whole new level and said, oh, well, we have this object here. This object needs to be valid in other formats that we export to. And you and I were doing some testing, Dax. When we exported to the PDF format, it exports the formula in a formula tag, right? It adds the alt text to the formula so that when it's voiced using assistive technology, it voices it in the appropriate manner.
Well, what it does is it actually does double duty. So one, it gives you your formula tag. And for those of you listening to this podcast, go to the YouTube video. I'm sharing my screen right now. And in the tags tree, we can see I've got 3 formula tags that are in my tags tree. And when I open them up, I see, in fact, this one has a formula inside a formula tag, which is probably not optimal, but it is what it is. So we've got our formula here, and it shows the normal text, just normal as if it were all in line. And you were like, well, that doesn't help me. H equals -12 path. I don't even know what that symbol says.
Which is totally wrong, because it's really saying H equals -1/2.
Right.
Instead of -12, right? So, yeah.
So if I right click on that tag and go to properties, what its first fallback is, if the screen reader you're using can't read or parse MathML, they have typed already for you the entire equation. You and I charge for this. This is a service we do. And we spend a lot of time for certain clients going in and typing in all of this stuff. And this says capital H equals -1/2, sum from 1 equals 1 to cap L minus, right? It literally is the alt text for the whole thing, right? But for those technologies like NVDA and JAWS, which can parse MathML, if we do a little bit of a deeper dive, and in our properties of that tag, we go to edit tag, and then we can see, actually, we're going to go to edit attribute objects. And under the attribute objects, we can see that there actually is a MathML line of code in the tag properties that is the HTML code or the MathML code that is the right voicing. So carried the underlying MathML you pasted into Word into the PDF and allows that to be discoverable by NVDA and JAWS so that it is voiced correctly. And as a fallback, has the alt text on top of it. It's a great solution.
Yeah. I mean, I think the way they implemented it was really efficient, right? I mean, like I said, you know, if you're doing this type of work, you kind of need to know what MathML is, right?
Yes.
But if you can grab that MathML code and MathML for not to bore everybody, but MathML is really just XML, right? It's just a XML file. It's describing how the formula should be rendered. And so now what I discovered, Dax, you and I were doing a little bit of testing prior to this podcast, and I was trying it and it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And it's because when I copied it, it copied like the HTML.
Yeah, this happens in social media posts a lot where you paste something and it doesn't come in right.
Yeah, when I was pasting it, it was just pasting the MathML in there. And I'm like, well, that's not what I want. That's weird. And so what I did is I pasted it into a text editor to kind of strip out all of the junk. And then when I copied and pasted it, it went right into a formula exactly the way I would expect it. So for everybody listening, right, if you're intending to use this, you may need to, like I said, just open Notepad on Windows or TextEdit on Mac, paste it in there, and then copy it again, and then paste it into Word, and that should work properly for you.
And we'll link to the article that Microsoft just recently published on MathML in the show notes and when we post this on social media, so you can get to that link. So great job by the folks at Microsoft. Peter Wu and his team are great. They've really been pushing forward both PowerPoint and Word for accessibility. I honestly think they are leaps and bounds ahead of where Adobe is when it comes to accessibility.
I would agree. I mean, like when you talk to those guys, we actually have a conversation with them. Right. Like they're aware of it. They're like, oh yeah, you know, we know about it. We're working on it. And so like with Microsoft, we've seen several things over the last, year or so. We've seen them add like, improved color contrast, within the app. So like if you pick a color that doesn't meet minimum color contrast, you get like a warning and it says, hey, you may want to try a different color. They just added, the formula. They added something else, Dax, and it's skipping my mind.
They just added in PowerPoint the ability to set the reading order. This is a huge thing. So if you're not aware, normally in PowerPoint, when you go in to set the order, trying to put the tags in order, you have to click on every object or drag it around and do a bunch of stuff. Now you can, when you go into the reading order, you say sort by row or sort by column, and it'll either go left to right or top to bottom. And it's hugely time saving when it comes to lots of complex objects on your slides.
Yeah. So again, kudos to Microsoft. I mean, like it's really something that we love to see when a company is actually putting effort into growing their product and improving the accessibility components, in their output. It's huge.
It's tantamount to Venngage, right? Venngage, if you've listened to this podcast at all, you know that Canva is not accessible. They've been trying, but they're not there yet. And Venngage absolutely took a very important stance in making sure that their content was accessible first and baked into the framework of their technology.
Well, and on that topic, Dax, like I recently had to work on a document that was created in Canva. Mm-hmm. And when I looked in the content pane, right, I was noticing that regular text objects were in a Form X object.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's really weird, right? Like, why would you even need a Form X object for this? So me being me, I pulled the object out of the Form X object. Do you know what happened? The text got giant it was reversed and upside down.
So they're using the form X object to control all the properties of the text. They're wrapping it, literally putting it in a form X bubble to get it to work right.
But it's just text. Like, why do we have to transform it or anything, right? And that really blew my mind. You know how we fixed it, Dax? And again, in graphic design, this is a huge no-no.
Sure.
But we took the PDF, printed it to PostScript.
Yep.
And then redistilled it just to kind of clear out all that craziness that was in there. And again, like as a graphic designer, I lose part of my soul by doing that, right? Because it's always been a huge no-no. Like you do not do that, but it's the only way that you could like strip all that stuff out. So anyway, I'm not here to, this is not a slam Canva thing. It was just a real odd thing that I saw when I was trying to work with that file. And I was just like, man, like they're doing some crazy stuff under the hood there.
We've talked about what people are and aren't doing, but Adobe has released a new feature in InDesign. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I do. So let me just make sure I get the version right. In version 21.2, right? So that's InDesign 2026. And it's their, I guess, second minor release of the product. And so what they've done is InDesign now automatically writes alt text for every graphic that you place in your document. Right.
All right.
And they turned this feature on automatically. Right. So what I want everybody to know and what I want everybody to be careful of is that by default, InDesign is now going to automatically write alt text for every time you hit file place, it's going to automatically write alt text for every one of those graphics. You do get a little adornment, a little icon that appears on the frame to indicate that it contains automatic alt text. And Dax, Keith Gilbert and I were talking about this morning because what that kind of tells us is that InDesign is also aware if you just have alt text on the graphic.
Sure.
And wouldn't it be convenient if you got a different icon if it contained alt text versus automatic alt text? Because then you could kind of easily scroll through your document and be like, oh yeah, I got alt text on all these objects, right? Would be super helpful, for us as users. Unfortunately, they didn't do that, but you do get an adornment when auto alt text has been added. Now, the quality of that alt text, I'll let all of you decide for yourself.
Well, I was told by tell me his name again. The editor for Creative Pro magazine,
Mike Rankin.
Well, I was made aware that Mike Rankin had done some discovery and found out that alt text does not even recognize Adobe's own screenshots of their own programs. Right. They haven't trained their AI model to be able to look up in the top left and see that's a Premiere icon or, that's an InDesign icon. So when you dump in a screenshot of whatever program, because you and I, we as instructors, this is what we do. We make these manuals, we do a lot of screenshots and that, and it can't recognize its own interfaces, which is interesting. I mean, kudos to them for having moving forward and jumping on the AI bandwagon. I applaud that. But just like Microsoft, which image of sunglasses, which has been the beginnings. I mean, but it gives me hope because I look at Microsoft a 3 years ago was image of sunglasses. Now Microsoft's alt text is pretty darn good in a lot of cases. You always have to check, but it's much better than image of sunglasses, as it were, in previous versions.
Yeah. And I mean, like in a way, this feature is not very surprising because if anybody was at Adobe Max this past year, the recurring theme across the board was all about AI. Right. It was all about AI and its use in all the various, programs. Now in Adobe InDesign, AI is utilized. You can you can extend the background of images using AI in InDesign. And you can now, now the other area where they're leveraging AI in InDesign is in the alt text, area. Right. Again, like, I don't know. Are some people going to be able to leverage this? I would assume so. Right. I mean, for some documents, it's probably going to be sufficient. But for others, maybe not,
If you're a check the box organization, you're just trying to get something done. It's not important what the alt text is from a really specific standpoint. Sure, I think this is fine. And is it a good place to start? Sure. In fact, I'm going to be at the Creative Pro Week Design Accessibility, the Design and AI Summit in April 9th and 10th. In fact, I'm taking a day from what normally will be one of my vacation days. I'm supposed to be on vacation that day, but I am going to make myself available on April 9th to present a session on AI and accessibility and how you can leverage AI responsibly to improve the accessibility of your content and what you need to watch out for and all the different pitfalls and how you can train your AI to actually give you better, more succinct content. So it's definitely here. It is not coming. AI is here to stay. And in fact, in order for this MathML example, I took the screenshot on the MathML article that was listed by Microsoft and dumped it into ChatGPT and said, ChatGPT, give me the MathML for the examples in this image. And it generated the MathML for me because I didn't want to have to write MathML for this sample just to test it and see what it was like. And it created the MathML for me and just did it right away. So I think that there's lots of useful ways that you can responsibly use MathML or AI, but I think that you have to be responsible when you do use it. So I think that that's a future podcast for sure.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how this pans out with Adobe and the feedback they get from the alt text after it's been out for a year. I'd love to see kind of where they're at. And
I mean, I think the danger in my opinion is that they turned it on by default.
Yeah.
And so my concern for people is that you're going to be using it and you're not going to really know that you're using it.
It'd be great if when you opened a document, it said our new AI feature is going to write alt text for you. Do you agree to have this on? And it's checked by default. And then you can have the ability to uncheck it or just hit OK and off it goes.
Right.
That would make sense.
Now, for everybody's knowledge, there is a preference. There's actually a new preference in InDesign now, and I have not installed this update yet. So, but it's called AI or something like that. But you are able to turn this feature off, right? So for those of you who are getting this first time information, be aware of it. And if you run the update for InDesign, which again is going to be 21.2, if you run that update, just know what you're getting into, right? And so, by default, it's going to write the alt text. You don't have to use it. You can always go in and customize it and change it. But if you don't want to be kind of tasked with having to go strip all of that out or check it or whatever, just turn the preference off and then you won't have to worry about it.
Awesome. Well, Chad, this has been a great conversation. We're going to be, our next event is CSUN, right? CSUN.
Yep.
If for those of you listening, if you are looking for the one conference to physically go to get the most out of your accessibility journey, I really highly suggest CSUN, Assistive Technology Conference down in Anaheim. You will see more people with disabilities using technology. You will get to interact with people at a real world level. You will get to learn from amazing instructors of all different areas: math, images, programming, dev, PDFs, all of the above, and video and more. And it is just a really great conference to go to. And there's, I don't know, 5,000 people that show up to that conference. It's not a little bit. It's a lot. So definitely head out that way. And Chad, you've got the dates for that, right?
Yeah, that is March 9th to 13th.
Yeah.
So, check it out. Registration is currently open. So if you're thinking about going, it truly is a great event. I think what I love about that event is that you get to kind of see accessibility in real life, usage, right? There's a lot of people there that are utilizing various different assistive technologies. And you get to be able to see some of the technology that's being used too. The exhibit booth is great. That's the other year you had discovered those sunglasses. You remember what those were?
So I actually was in Dubai when I discovered these glasses that I've yet to. They help people with dyslexia, and we're going to do that on a future podcast. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but but definitely there's some stuff. But one of the ones that we always talk about is Nikon's or Sony's direct to retina cameras that they always have. These cameras, I talked with the gentleman who developed the technology, but it beams a laser directly onto your retina, passing the cornea. And so if you've got stigmatisms that affect your cornea where you cannot see or you have diminished vision, this image will allow you to still take photographs. This technology will allow you to still take photographs through a Sony camera by beaming that image directly past the damaged part of your eye onto your retina, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of stuff and more. So lots of great stuff. And my session there is Beyond Alt Text, building interactive, user-driven infographics. And my other session is PDF footnotes and endnotes, solutions that work. And Chad, you and I are both going to be at the booth. So come by. We don't know what the booth number is yet, but come by and say hi. We'd love to meet you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The one of the things I remember, Dax, at CSUN, and you knew this guy, he's a blind videographer.
Yep.
Do you remember him? What was his name?
James Graff.
James Graff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really cool guy to meet. He's a blind videographer. He creates video content, and what an amazing guy he was, and really cool to talk to. It's just awesome to see, how people are leveraging, various technologies, in their spaces. So really cool. Yep. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you found this discussion helpful and engaging. My name is Chad Chilius.
And my name is Dax Castro, where every other week we unravel accessibility for you.
Thanks, guys.